Hello and welcome to Asia TV, Business Talk with Taha. Today I have a guest in the studio who makes investors understand how they can grow their money quickly and in a safe environment by investing in startup companies across the globe. Abhilasha Dafria, with a double master's in marketing from Mumbai University and master's in foreign languages, learned French, Spanish and German. Her first job was as a startup journalist with an online media platform where she interviewed hundreds of Indian entrepreneurs and learnt about their journey. In 2013, she started up her own company called The Venturator that helps startups connect with the right ecosystem enablers. So I welcome Abhilasha to the studio today. Thank you for coming in, Abhilasha.
Thank you for having me, Taha.
So Abhilasha, today please tell me and tell our audience something about yourself and how did you end up in the world of this entrepreneurism?
Like you said, I did my master's in marketing and then I did my master's in foreign languages. So I went about to learn French, Spanish and German. And while I was still doing German, I started freelancing for an Indian online media portal where I interviewed hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs and understood their business challenges and the initial hurdles and so on and so forth. I realized a lot of these guys were right out of college. They had a great idea, but they didn't know who was the right person to connect to. And being a startup journalist, I had sort of like built that network around me in my personal capacity. So I used to make these connections, but I realized that there's a peculiar trend in the kind of phone calls I got, and everybody wanted to meet the same set of people.
Okay.
And you know how it is with entrepreneurs, right? They have this infectious energy about themselves. I knew I wanted to be on the other side of the table whenever the opportunity arose. When I identified that there's also an ecosystem out there who really wants to help Indian entrepreneurs grow, I realized there's potential to bridge the gap here.
Okay.
So that's when I quit my job, and somewhere actually end of 2013-14 is when I started up the Venturator. So the Venturator essentially is a venture plus accelerator.
Okay.
So we help startups accelerate from point A to point B in the shortest time span.
Okay.
And with that, we primarily focus on fundraising, but that's not our only goal. We help startups connect with everybody in the ecosystem.
Okay, that's very good to know. So how many startups have you helped till now, if I may ask?
If I were to quantify just the number of startups that we have helped across this journey of about 4.5 years now, I think, and we were discussing this in the team the other day, I think it's more than 600 startups.
Wow, that's a great number.
And this could be just like connecting them to the right legal guy, the right tech guy, or a mentor or an investor and so on and so forth. However, in terms of fundraising, which has been our goal or our core focus for the last 1 year, we've raised money for about 7 startups.
But don't you think, old school, this would be like a chamber of commerce or a business council doing the same job? What would you say is the difference between the two that I've just mentioned?
Well, I completely agree with you. And when we started and when we used to connect startups with just ecosystem enablers, we typically didn't make much money off it. So most of our money came from doing events, which was sponsored by corporates who wanted to brand themselves around the startup ecosystem.
Right.
And we realized that somewhere we are becoming like this chamber of commerce, or in another sense, maybe also an NGO where we're just helping startups grow, but at the same time, it's just difficult to monetize from a startup founder who himself is like figuring out his resources.
Right.
I think that's when we pivoted from just being a platform that helps startups connect with ecosystem enablers to being, I think now we're almost like a small size investment bank. So now our focus is purely on fundraising for entrepreneurs and making them investment ready, because most of these guys, this is their first round of fundraising, so they don't even know how to optimize or milk that opportunity of meeting a high-end investor. And we help them walk the talk, and we help them get in front of the investor and pitch correctly. And then we take a success fee out of it. So we moved out of just purely making connections to actually doing some significant impact in helping them grow.
Okay. And what is the minimum ticket size you've done till now, and the maximum too?
Oh, well, we've done as little as 50 lakhs, which happened like in 24 hours flat.
Okay, that's really
And
interesting.
yeah,
Wow.
and we did as much as 1.5 million in a recent series pre-series A round.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's interesting. So, you know, people from the developing world do not really look at the Western world to come out and do things here anymore. What made you come to UK? How did that happen?
Well, a lot of serendipity. I never thought UK was on the cards. It was globally growing, was something that we dreamt of, but certainly not like in the next 6 to 8 months. So that was something that we're looking at really long term. But funnily, I got married to a guy who is based out of UK. He's been in investment banking for the last 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
So that kind of gave me the opportunity to leverage living in the UK because I had a home and I had food and I had shelter.
Right.
However, I didn't move to the UK even after 8 months of my marriage because I wanted to be completely sure that there's a market for me.
Sure.
And for the sake of marriage and moving out to your husband's place and screwing up everything that I have built back home,
Yeah.
I was just not mentally ready for that. But fortunately, things fell in place.
That's very good. That's very good. So tell us, what is the fundamental difference in fundraising in India versus fundraising for Asian startups in Europe?
Fundamental difference is the financial bandwidth, honestly, of Indian investors to invest even a small ticket size in Indian startups, and this is across most developing countries, is a lot more negotiation, it's a lot more conversation than people in the developed world. I'm talking most of London and even the US. They're more of startup patrons. So, they're believers of the dreams and the believers of the mission behind the business. So they're not the kind of people who'd get dissuaded by enough naysayers. So those kind of people are actually very interesting angel investors because you want people to come in with money quickly, even if it's a small ticket size, and believe in growing this business into a big company versus just putting your money in there and then fretting about it.
Okay.
So I think my conversations have changed completely talking to investors outside India versus speaking to those in India. Although it's very generalized, you find the same set of people everywhere also. But yeah, I think fundamentally that's the difference.
Okay. I mean, in the Asian subcontinent, from what I know, it is even very difficult to start a company. Forget about a startup. So how is that being perceived with these new young entrepreneurs who are coming up with these startup companies and whatever they're doing? Because government has to be on your side. In the Western world, what we see is the government is on your side. They are helping you to be entrepreneurs rather than being employees of somebody else. So what is it that people are facing in India right now or in the Asian subcontinent?
Well, I'll speak most of India. I think since 2014, there has been a huge wave, a huge startup wave, where the government has also, there was this whole Stand Up India, Startup India, and these are just conversations. I mean, it's going to take a lot of time for the government to actually do something significant for the ecosystem. But even until those policies come into play, it's really, and some of them are already. But it's really important to have the word around, to understand what's the difference between a startup and a company, to understand what it is to quit your regular life and take up entrepreneurship. And the Modi government now in India is very pro and very bullish about the startup ecosystem and just helping the manufacturing industry grow and helping young entrepreneurs pursue their dreams. Not just at a government level, I also feel at a very fundamental education level. It's the responsibility of education institutes to sort of also support the student's career, and most of the top institutes, what they do is they give them like a 2-year break, that you can try your own startup, and if it doesn't work, you can still come back for placements.
Right.
So all of this is very encouraging and very positive in terms of just letting a young founder know that there's somebody who's got your back.
Okay.
So it's not like that I waste my life even if things go south, and mostly things will. So. So in that sense, I feel that the developing world is coming at par
with the West.
With the West.
That's very interesting. So based on that, how do you select your startups and pitch? How do you do that?
So we have a very strong curation team in place.
Okay.
I'm an eternal optimist. You give me any startup and I can give you like 10 used cases why it would work, but that's not a good way to curate startups. So my team has kind of kicked me out of the investment judgment panel that they create.
Right.
What they do is they have this 150-point checklist,
Okay.
but I think it eventually comes down to a big market, a great team,
Yeah.
and a wonderful product.
Okay.
And you definitely don't compromise on the big market.
Okay.
And especially now that I pitch to investors here, it's very important for me to also sort of mitigate the investors' risk by ensuring that we have taken care of the financial duty, we have taken care of the legal duty,
Okay.
and we've done the business duty as well. So in that sense, we mitigate the people and the product risk. So the only risk you're taking is the market risk,
Okay.
which is true for any geography. So
Right.
then investing in a remote location becomes way easier.
Okay. What about the currency fluctuations and things like that happen?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there is a FX hit that investors take, but the upside of investing in high growth markets is so huge. I mean, it very well makes up for it. Although for most of our investors, they've invested from their Indian NRE accounts, so
Right.
that quite hasn't been a problem yet.
Okay.
But we look at currently we are fundraising for a startup that has investors from the UK, and they have invested in GBP, and it's okay.
Okay, so small ticket size doesn't matter so much. Big ticket size,
It
obviously.
might matter more, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. So, what would you advise entrepreneurs fundraising from foreign markets?
To entrepreneurs who are looking at fundraising from foreign investors, I think it's very important to sort of have some sort of global precedence.
Okay.
It's very you get an investor's confidence if you can match or align what startup you are doing, what product or service you have to offer with a successful company in the origin that the investor is. If not, at least some sort of alignment that hey, we're building this in India because it's cheaper costs here, but we want to enter in the UK market, and preferably raise money from somebody who is been in that sector. So if it's an F&B product that you're trying to sell and you want to enter European markets or you want to enter the West, it's always nicer to meet somebody in the F&B industry, so that it's not just dumb money. It's more growth. And and the guy brings his own expertise about being in a foreign market, which you really need. So that's a win-win. So what I'd suggest is always raise money from the right people, and raise money from people who understand your sector and align what you're doing with what's happening in their country.
Okay. And do you think in India a concept like Dragon's Den or Shark Tanks will ever work, or is something like that already happening?
Oh, well, a friend of mine actually is building something similar to Shark Tank. It's called Dropout. It's a show in MTV.
Okay.
We have a lot of demo days. We have a lot of demo pitches that happen across institutes, across a lot of media portals. Have this. So I think it's pretty much there. The concept like Shark Tank will pretty much fly in India. India has got, and not just India, I think a lot of Asia has so much of potential and so much of hustle that I think something like this is a great platform for people to step up and pitch.
Great. What's been the highs and lows in your journey then?
We have had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and I think some of our highs really have come with closing deals.
Okay.
Because neither do I nor does most of my team have any investment banking background per se. So we are learning the tricks of the trade grounds up from scratch.
Okay.
The learning curve is so steep in situations such as these, when you're actually, even if you have some sort of knowledge, it's very different when you're actually on the ground and pitching about a startup to an investor.
Right.
And the kind of mistakes we make is sometimes it's hideous when we think about it. But we've always learned and grown from those. Okay. And I think our highs really come when we get a thank you from the entrepreneur that we have really, really worked hard for. And that means so much to us. It means so much more than the money. And of course, the lows are, I mean, we can spend another 2 hours just talking about that, because it's like every moment is a new low. We feel like, okay, we have hit a low now, it can't get worse than that, and then it just does. So so that's how it's been.
So we've been talking about the highs and lows. Tell me, when you raised money for the company in 24 hours, how did you feel and how did the company feel about it?
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, this morning we got like introduced to each other, and he said that we have a we have a like a convertible round of about 50 lakhs, if you can think of investors. And I said, yeah, we have some investors in Zurich and Netherlands, and we just called them up, and they said, yeah, I think a company like that could fly. So how do send me the term sheet. And there was literally no conversation between the investor and the entrepreneur. So even we were very surprised, will the money actually come? And then it did. So it was amazing. It's like one of the most memorable fundraisers we have ever done. And in fact, that was also very important for us, because it made me realize that there is actually a market outside India where people have the financial bandwidth and the appetite to invest in Indian markets.
Right.
However, nobody is bringing them the right deals, because we are just so saturated in ourselves. So kind of like made me want to move out and explore new markets as well.
That's interesting. So now, tell me, how did it feel when you raised the first 1.5 million, or the largest ticket size for a business? What was your feeling, or how did your team feel at that time?
Oh, when we raised our first $1 million, it's such a huge process. Even after the term sheet is signed and the investors all kicked about the startup, and the startup thinks that the money is coming, there are still so many negotiations that happen on a term sheet, whether we should do tranches or not, whether these are the deliverables or not, or whether we should co-invest or not. And we, as the middlemen, have to really negotiate with both ends, both sides of the party, or both the parties essentially. So for us, it's very mentally consuming, honestly. At some point we were like, wow, I just wish this, I don't know, I mean, I cannot even deal with this anymore. So it becomes really hectic when a deal is on. It's panic. We don't sleep for like nights together. Once the term sheet, the indicative terms are sent across, we go crazy that, oh my God, will this close or not? And I think towards the end of the deal, when they signed, and there was a media announcement around it, and honestly we thought it would be a high, but we were just so relieved, because the high really comes when you're not expecting something and it happens, like the 24-hour deal that we did. But something like this, it had taken so much of our time and effort that we just like, wow, one day we'll just sleep and like get over this. So.
So I'm sure you must be aware that a lot of American companies are coming and investing in the UK. Why is that? Why are not UK investors investing in UK companies? Why are Americans coming to the UK investing in UK companies?
It's very interesting that you say this. And there was a wonderful line a friend of mine once said, that Europe is always late to the party. So there's this very happening party happening, around the corner. And the US is throwing dollars over it, and the European guys are standing outside thinking there's something happening there, should we go there or not? And I think the appetite, the risk-taking appetite in high growth markets, or even just I mean, generally the European tendency is to mitigate the risk, the downside. And I think the West is just, US is just eternally optimist. They kind of like want to take more risks. They know how to make businesses work. And maybe that's the reason why they identify more potential in most parts of the world. And I won't say just UK, even in Israel, even in India, you see even in China, you see a lot of US companies coming and investing and building big companies, while the Indian investors or the UK investors are just like sort of debating, should we not? So that's what it is. I mean, they're just always late to the party.
So you're saying Europeans and Asians are conservative, whereas
when it comes to like high risk investing, they are, but they are very financially smart. So in that sense, when they take a decision, they ensure that
it's going to happen.
Yeah, they make it happen. Yeah.
And now my next question is about your team. So is your team behind you? the right team who also advise you in the right way in making the decisions? So tell me something about your team.
My team actually, when I moved to Bangalore and I started setting up a team there, initially we were just like a bunch of people who wanted to have a lot of fun, and loved doing what we were doing and making some money out of it. But it's really your low phases where you know who your people are, and you know, I mean, the time I had where I kind of like was considering if I should move to the UK or not, all my advisors, all my investors, my team, the way they've stood by my side and the way they've stepped up to their responsibilities, because I couldn't contemplate the idea of leaving my team and working out from a remote location. And you know, I mean, it's just a very different experience, and I didn't know how they would you know, fill my space in.
Right.
But the way each one of them has stepped up, it's so, I mean, I get to be the founder and it's my name and all of that, but it's, you realize that your name is no longer a proper name, it's more like a common name, because it represents so many more people who are just working relentlessly, and they make your dream theirs with so much of passion that it just makes you like wonder what right you did to meet all these people. So
Great. So what would you say to your team today while you were here with me?
Look, I am here with Taha and I'm representing all of you guys. So yeah, thank you so much for always having my back.
That's great.
Because you're my first family, if anything.
Right. That's a very good message for your family there. Any messages for the audience that's watching you out there today? Step into the world of entrepreneurship, become a startup company, something like that. You know.
I think I'd just say that you know, do it once if you want to. My husband keeps like contemplating, you know, what would it had been like had he done a startup in India versus being in investment banking. And I know he's in a position where a lot of people are envious of him and want to you know, make the money he does. But you know, to make life a life without regrets, it's important to just do things, like not think, just do. Because the worst case scenario is that the startup will fail, but trust me, the kind of people you meet and the knowledge that you gain, it is, you can't, as a person, you can't fail, even if the startup does. You only grow being an entrepreneur. It's meditative. It teaches you so much about yourself. So I think once in your life, everybody should do a startup.
Right. So how many times should they fall down and get up again and walk?
As many times as it takes for them to learn how to walk.
Yeah,
but
don't join the queue.
Yeah, don't join the queue. Just get up.
Thank you, Abhilasha.
Thank you, Taha.
That was great. I hope our audience has learned a lot from you today, and thank you very much once again for coming in. I have learned a lot from you today, I must say that. And thank you guys. Thank you for watching Asia TV Business Talk with Taha. I will be back with another interesting guest soon on this show. Goodbye.